Hello and welcome to WEEP instructional videos. My name is Stephanie and today we'll be learning to use the expression builder. The expression builder is a simple way of entering expressions or functions into WEEP. Right now we're looking at a modified version of the tutorial model. We can see that a river provides water to Big City, which will treat some of it at a wastewater treatment plant, and whatever it can't treat will go into the river. And what it can treat can go to the agricultural catchment. Let's use the expression builder to help us with our model. I'm going to start by entering the population data into Big City. So I'll right-click, go to Edit Data, and Annual Activity Level. My model starts in the year 2000, but say that we didn't have census data about population for that year. We can use data from the last census to figure out what the population would be in the year 2000. To do this, we can use a function in the expression builder. To open the expression builder, I'll click on this white box so an arrow appears. Opening that arrow, I can see the expression builder. There's a function tab and a branches tab. I'm interested in the function right now, and I'm looking for a function called growth from. These are in alphabetical order, so I'll just scroll down, and here it is. I can either double-click or drag it down. WEEP will tell you the syntax, the description, as well as provide an example for the function. Following this, I know that my population growth rate was 1.75%, and I have to include that percent sign as we see in the example. The year of the last census was 1990, and the population at that time was 733,520 people. I'll click Finish, and now we can see that the population in the year 2000 is over 800,000 people. You can see the exact value in table. I can also look at the population over time in my model by going to Reference and then back to the chart to see how it grows. Next, I want to enter data for the annual water use rate. Since my annual activity level is population, this will be the amount of water that each person in the population uses. Going back to current accounts, I could type in a number here, but say that my model has multiple cities and each person uses roughly the same amount of water per year. In that case, it would be better to have data in one place that you can reference from everywhere else, so that if you need to change it, you only have to change it in one place. This is what the key assumptions are for, and we can see that my model does have a key assumption for unit domestic water use. So instead of writing a number in here, I'm going to reference that key assumption. To do so, I'll open up my expression builder, and this time go into branches. The branches here are exactly the same as in the data tree over here. So I know that if I open key assumptions, I'll find my unit domestic water use. This was something that I built into my model earlier. Finish. And now we can see that Big City annual water use rate is calling the value from my key assumption. If you have a complicated expression here, you might want to go into Elaboration, and you'll be able to see the expression as well as the values, and you can click on the different parts of it to bring you right into the place where you can edit it. Next, we'll go into the wastewater treatment plant. I'm going to zoom in and click on it. So we go right there. And let's look at the notes. We have data for 2000, 2003, and 2010 in million gallons per day. Notice that our units are million cubic meters per day. That's okay, we can do a conversion in the expression builder. But before we do this, let's enter this data as it is. I'm going to open up my expression builder, go back to functions, and I'll notice that it says use wizard to add time series functions. This is a time series function, and I'll use interp. So scrolling down to I, interp. I drag it down here. You can also access the time series wizard directly by clicking on the arrow that brought up the expression builder. For a monthly model, the yearly time series wizard and the monthly time series wizard will be listed right below the expression builder. I'm going to use this as a step function to say that my data is changing because new wastewater treatment plants are coming online. I'll click Next, and I'll say I'll enter the data, but I do have an option to link to Excel. And here I can enter the data. So for the year 2000, it was 132. For 2003, it was 150. And for 2010, it was 200. And again, this is million gallons per day. And here we can see the growing values. Remember that you can also drag values. For instance, if I wanted 2003 to be higher, I could just drag it up. But I'll leave it at 150 for right now. Now that I have the values plugged in, I have to deal with the fact that they're in million gallons per day instead of million cubic meters per day. All I need to do is enter a conversion rate right into my equation. So I'll say times 0.00378, and that will convert it to cubic meters. I could have done the conversion beforehand and typed in the actual data into the interp function. A good reason to do it this way is so you can double check your data. So for instance, if I went back and I said, did I actually enter 132 million gallons per day? I wouldn't have to do the math again. I could just look right here and see it. So now I'll say finish. And let's look at those results. Chart, and I'll go to reference over time. And we can see that in million cubic meters per day, we start at about 0.5 and end up maybe around 0.8. Going back to the schematic, let's remember that we only want treated wastewater to go to the agricultural catchment. One way to control this is with the capacity of the transmission link. Let's go into the transmission link. I'll go into data and find it on my data tree. So supply and resources, transmission links to agricultural catchment from the wastewater treatment plant. If I look in my notes here, I see that there's an actual capacity of this transmission link, which is 0.6 million cubic meters per day. And let's remember that our wastewater treatment plant's capacity changes. So we need to come up with an expression that will allow us to transfer treated water, but not more treated water than the capacity of the transmission link. Let's open up the expression builder to develop an expression to allow us to do this. And I want to use the if statement. I could scroll down and find it. And here's the syntax in the description. I can also just type it in, if. And now I want to put an expression in for one of my branches, the wastewater treatment plant. So I'll open up water quality, wastewater treatment plant, and here's my plant. Now when I drag it down into my expression, I'll see a lot of information available. So all of these different things are either variables, which are data that we enter into LEAP, or I can look at results from previous time steps. So for instance, the total inflow. Right now, I just want to look at daily capacity. So I'll say if the daily capacity is greater than 0.6, then use 0.6. Otherwise, use the daily capacity. Drag it down again. That's the syntax for an if statement. So here I'll say finish. If I had just put in 0.6, we might have ended up with some water that hadn't been treated. There's another way to do this. Open up the expression builder again, and I'm going to write a slightly simpler expression. I'll say min and put in my wastewater treatment plant capacity again. And 0.6. This ensures that we're putting in no more water than is treated and no more water than the transmission link can handle. Let's look at what this looks like coming into the future. If we go to chart, we can see that it starts at 0.5, goes up somewhere around 0.56, and then tops off at 0.6. That's exactly what we want. But we have to remember that we were working in million cubic meters per day, whereas this is cubic meters per second. We could do a unit conversion within the expression builder, as we did before, but we could also change the units themselves. Let's make sure to do this in current accounts. For scale, I'll click on this box and an arrow appears, and I'll say million, cubic meters, and do the same here. Click on the box, the arrow appears, per day. Now it's reading in the data from the other branch and has the same units. I can go back now and look at the results in reference over the years in my chart and see that we are receiving an increasing amount of water, but it doesn't increase above 0.6. This has been a LEAP instructional video. Good luck with your model.